Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank everyone for their contributions to the debate today. The tone of the debate has been one of consensus, and I think members across the House want to see improvements, perhaps with the exception, it seems, of the member for Shipley, who appears to want to take us back to the penal system of the 18th century. Penal policy has fortunately moved on since then, and I often think it would be nice if the honourable member for Shipley would do so too. There were many notable contributions, and due to the constraints of time, I apologise in advance for not mentioning everybody. We heard from the former Lord Chancellor, the Right Honourable Member for Rushcliffe, who said he was disappointed by the progress that's been made on rehabilitation and criticised our ridiculously excessive prison population. He referred to the last vestiges of indeterminate sentences, and I look forward to hearing from the Minister about any plans in relation to that. We heard from my honourable friend, the member for Wansbeck, in a wide-ranging speech with some very terrible examples of what has been going on at HMP Northumberland. Also from the chair of the Justice Select Committee, the Right Honourable Member for Bromley and Chislehurst, who referred to the excellent report of Lord Harris, which obviously has not been fully implemented. But he did mention the protocol that we would like to see for the Chief Inspector of Prisons, which will ensure that independence does not become compromised, as was suggested in the hearing recently in the Justice Select Committee. And I would particularly like to mention the speech of my friend, the member for Darlington, very experienced in these areas, who talked about the tragic case of Lorraine Barwell and made two requests to the Minister. The first about naming prison officers killed on duty at the start of Prime Minister's questions, and also the Harris report recommendation about a personal telephone call to the family of prisoners who take their lives and the officers who find them. We also heard from the member for Lancaster and Fleetwood about the retirement age of prisoners and whether 68 will be too late and whether it will be safe for prison officers to continue working to that age, and from the member for St Helens South and Wiston, who spoke from personal experience as chair of a secure unit for children in her borough, and she spoke with great passion. Finally, to my friend, the member for Haywood and Middleton, who quite rightly highlighted the problems in probation since privatisation. The public and victims of crime need to have confidence that justice is being done, that offenders are being punished appropriately and rehabilitated, and that communities are being protected. And making prisons work is not only the right thing to do, it will save us money and make us all safer as a result. But what we have heard in the debate today is deeply concerning. We have a prison service at breaking point with nearly 85,000 people in our prisons. We have the highest imprisonment rate in Western Europe, with an average annual cost per place at over £36,000 a year. And the projected increase in the prison population comes at a time when the Ministry of Justice is required under the Chancellor's spending review to reduce its running costs by £600 million by 2019-20. And £600 million is what it costs to run 30 medium to large prisons annually. So it does no one any favours, the government, the Ministry of Justice, those working in the prison sector, taxpayers and prisoners themselves, to ignore the fact that we have, despite what the Justice Secretary said earlier, a crisis on our hands. And it's a crisis that was eloquently summed up by the current Chief Inspector of Prisons, Nick Hardwick, whom the Justice Secretary rightly praised yesterday and again today in this House, who said in his annual report, "You're more likely to die in prison than 5 years ago. More prisoners were murdered, killed themselves, self-harmed and were victims of assault than 5 years ago. There were more serious assaults, and the number of assaults and serious assaults against staff also rose." And here's just one example of what that looks like. At Cardiff Prison in my constituency, Darren Thomas, who was jailed for breaching an ASBO for street begging in the city centre, died after being stabbed to death with a ballpoint pen in his cell by his cellmate. The perpetrator was convicted of Darren's murder last year. And I think we need to look wider than Medway. According to press reports that feature in Private Eye this week, failures of operators of a G4S-run prison to allow medical assistance to a 37-year-old prisoner who died in his cell because his epilepsy had not been diagnosed. That prison was HMP Park Prison in Bridgend, which the Justice Minister singled out for praise this afternoon. So I repeat our call from these benches for the Justice Secretary to instigate a review into all G4S-run prisons. Prison staff are not safe either. Serious assaults on staff are up by 42%. And the prison watchdog has warned that the increasing use of psychoactive drugs is the most serious threat to the safety and security of jails. The use of these drugs has increased by 615% between 2014 and 2015. And the use specifically of the drug spice by 4,813% over the last 4 years. And I know the Justice Secretary has said that the legislation against psychoactive substances is making possession within prison a specific offence. But does he really think that that alone is going to solve a problem within our prisons? As my honourable friend, the member for Hammersmith, has pointed out, the issue is the smuggling of the drugs into prison. So the combination of a growing prison population, prisons awash with drugs and alcohol, cuts to staffing and specifically prison budget cuts is a very dangerous mix. And as the Chief Inspector of Prisons in her report, published as long ago as 2010, predicted that danger, and she said, the hidden and incremental pressures this produces should not be underestimated, even though they are at present being contained. There are two risks of increased instability in an inherently fragile environment and of reducing prisons' capacity to rehabilitate those they hold. What was predicted has now happened. And all of these problems cost. They cost lives, they cost livelihoods, and they cost taxpayers money. We all agree that we need to reduce our prison population, and we can only solve the problem by effective prevention. Prisons try to teach offenders to be good prisoners, to be compliant. But more importantly, we need to teach them to be good citizens, to be able to show initiative and independence to prepare them for reintegration into our communities. And that is why the reckless privatisation of the probation service by the last coalition government was such a mistake. Artificially splitting responsibility for offenders between two separate organisations based on different levels of risk. I haven't got time to give way, I'm sorry. Taking no account of how risk levels fluctuate. And what was predicted by probation professionals, outside experts, by NAPO and service users has happened. Chaos. Huge numbers of redundancies. In some community rehabilitation companies, redundancies of 40% of the staff. IT systems not fit for purpose, cases falling through the cracks, and the service in South Yorkshire, which the government gave to a French catering company to run under threat of renationalisation. And I would ask the Minister to tell the House whether or not the rumours of renationalisation of the South Yorkshire CRC are correct. Decisions on the supervision of dangerous offenders should be determined by public safety rather than profit. The Justice Secretary is trying his best. I do believe that he is doing that, and I almost have some sympathy for him. It can't be easy having to take up his role, equipped with a shovel, to clear up what I will politely call the residue that his predecessor, now Leader of the House, left him. Perhaps when he has finished shovelling that up, which is obviously going to take some time, we will see more than just an acknowledgement of the problems and references to prison reform strategy, and actually see concrete steps taken to address the scale of this crisis. This is the third time the party opposite have promised a rehabilitation revolution, and I look forward to hearing from the Justice Secretary soon with his explanation of what went wrong last time and what will be different this time round under his watch.
Andrew Salu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And we have had an